All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. My guest tonight is his second time coming on the podcast, but his first time coming on as a champ. Just coming off, as if I read this right, your first ever championship as a basketball player. We got Nik Caner Medley joining us from Florida tonight. But Nick, is that true? Your first championship you've ever won?
My first championship as a pro. Yeah, I won an ACC championship in college, but as a pro, yeah, first one, and it was a great year, and I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you having me.
So we got to talk about this championship first because it's fresh. It's just happened. You're coming up in the spring here. So this past year was supposed to be your last year, right? Didn't you go into it saying this is it, the swan song, and sign the team in France? And just take us through it. And for those that aren't familiar with French basketball, very good domestically, right? You've seen a lot of guys come up that are in the NBA now. France has produced a ton of great talent, and they all got their start there. So tell us about this league. I think it's called the LNB, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the top leagues in Europe. You mentioned it, some of the guys way back from Tony Parker, Boris Diaw, Rodrigue Beaubois, that's how you pronounce his name. A bunch of young guys, the guard who the Celtics have now, he was in Orlando. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but yeah, there's a lot of young guys in France. It's a really talented league, really talented country. The culture of basketball there has gotten bigger and bigger over the last 10 years, 15 years. And yeah, man, going into the season, it was my last year. I was really sort of sold on that with my family, myself. One of the reasons we went to the region we went to is because it was, it's on the south of France on the beach. And it was a place where my family could come a lot, with my daughter being, at that time she was 1 year old. My wife enjoys the area. When we were in Monaco a few years back, we loved it. She loved it. So we figured it was a really good place to go play at a high level, but also have, as I finished, be at a really nice place off the court. And then we get there and it's just completely shut down pretty much. I mean, like going to the gym and going to the grocery store. So it I left the States in August with the narrative being that Europe had gotten ahead of COVID and things were open and they did it the right way. And the US had dropped the ball. And then like a month after I get there, because things were completely open, like August, September, they had a huge spike and it was shut down to like when April and May in Maine was basically what it was like there the entire time. You could only go to essential places, no fans. We had no fans at the games. At the beginning of the season, they staggered the games. They spread the games apart because they were trying to protect their revenue and buy time until they could have fans. With no fans, a lot of these teams rely on their ticket income and merchandise income at the game. So they struggle with that. So it benefited me a little bit because the less games, the more time I have to recover. So we started off the season strong. Our goal was to compete, for a championship. I feel like that's, everybody's goal when they start a season, like we're going to win a championship. But as the season goes on, you kind of see if that's a reality based on the, how the team kind of judge. Season went on. My body felt good. We played well. It was a great group. It was a great organization, great coach, young guy, 42, former player. And it just was one of those situations where everything went right that had to go right. Things clicked. And then with about a month left in the season, we were in the mix to win a championship, and they offered me an extension, which was pretty surprising to me. I'd played well, but also at my age, I'm going to be 38 in October. For them to offer me, kind of a longer term was surprising, but it was also an affirmation for me that they appreciated, kind of my professionalism, the work I was putting in. And I think just the fact that they appreciated me and the fact that they wanted me to be around for an extended period of time, that was a huge part of it for me. It was like, look, I still love to play, but I also don't want to steal checks. You know what I mean? I don't want to go somewhere on my resume and just, sit on the end of the bench and be a cheerleader and basically take somebody else's job who's young and hungry and, at a different stage in their career. So I've always been conscientious of that. And I'm like, I want to finish when, not when I'm completely washed, but I want to finish when like I can still play, but, and I haven't felt like I'm out here just stealing checks. And so that's always been something that's been a big deal for me. But their training facility, your ability to take care of your body there, their trainers, I just felt good. And I feel like it's a good place for me to finish my career. And after winning a championship too, I guess in my mind, I would have thought, oh, I won a championship. That's a great way to go out. But also winning a championship and when I've been trying to do it now for 15 years, it gives me so much respect for the other guys in the locker room and my coach. Like, I really mess with you. Like, you just, as a group, we just accomplished something. Like, I respect you as a man, as a pro. And I felt that way about everybody in the locker room, all the way up to the front office. And in my career, there's only a few times I've felt that way. So, it was that too, where it was just like, man, why would I not want to be here if I can still play, and then also it's like, well, we also want to actually do all the things that we came here to do off the court too. Like, I want to be able to go to some restaurants and enjoy that area. So it just came together, man. And I'm excited about it. And to your initial question, like, the training part of it for me now is so much more intense than it was when I was younger, because I have the experience of sometimes ignorance is bliss. Like, I know a little too much. Like, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I know I'm going to feel terrible. I know I'm setting myself up for potential injury. So I kind of have to look myself in the mirror and just say, look, this is what I have to do. I know what the blueprint is. Yeah, it's a ton of work. You know what I mean? Do I want to do 2-a-days during the summer when I'm only back for 8 weeks, with my family in Miami? I love it. I mean, so like, yeah, I do want to do it, but is there other things that would be cool to do in my time too at this point? Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, I know what I have to do. And so I've been really committed to that this summer so far. And it's gone well.
Speaking of resume, you added to it this past year too, right? So the championship, and you're not selling checks yet because you made, was it all tournament team or all league? Didn't you make something like top 5?
Yeah, I got first team all league, which it's crazy because it was so off my radar. Like, there's been leagues, to be fair, seasons that I've gone into it with individual goals. Like, I want to be, I want to try to be MVP, or I want to be first team. These are goals that I think are healthy to set as a player, in your career. Obviously you want to win, and that comes first, but to build your career and the trajectory of your career, obviously those things help. Like, it's a business at the end of the day, and you're trying to get paid. So, for your family and everything. So those goals are there. But for me, I had like we talked, like, I was done. Like, this is going to be my last year. The last thing that was on my radar was anything individual. It was like, I'm going to go and I want to win, and the more you win, the more you enjoy it. So I want to enjoy my last year. And then through winning, obviously, comes individual accolades. And we were in first in the league, and I guess my numbers, me and maybe one or two other guys had the best sort of numbers on the team when you kind of looked at the whole landscape. And yeah, I mean, I at our final team dinner, they were doing a bunch of stuff with our sponsors and we got our league trophy because we couldn't get it during the thing because of COVID. So they gave it to us after. And then the team captain stood up in front of everybody and was like, well, we got one more award to give. I'm kind of still joking with my teammates, paying no attention. And, they're like, we got a first team all league guy here. And I'm thinking it's my point guard, Jay Diggs, because he was nominated for one of the finalists for MVP. So I'm thinking it's got to be him. And then they announced me, it was a position thing. He had a couple other guys at his position, I guess, that the guy who actually got MVP was also a point guard. So that kind of was the reason why from that angle. But yeah, and I was, so for me, it was the second time I've done it. My first time, I was 27. probably my best year as a pro. I was in Madrid, and I was an MVP finalist. I ended up getting runner up to a dude from Spain. Uh, and that year I was first team All League, but I was the oldest guy to ever do it, which is something that I'm proud of. And yeah, it was crazy how the year played out, man. It was a year of not many expectations, and then ultimately some of the biggest accomplishments in my career. So it was kind of weird how that all worked out that way.
You mentioned how at this point in your career, you got to do X, Y, Z, so you're not feeling it the next day, or you can get up and go again the next day type thing. So taking care of your body is huge at this point, but also like your game has to change as you age, right? You can't do the things that you used to do at 25, 26. So, and you mentioned sometimes you know a little bit too much. So, like, how do you deal with knowing like, okay, I can't do these things anymore? Like, how has your game evolved as you've gotten older to still be able to perform at such a high level?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting for me as I, analyze my own game and try to kind of formulate not a game plan, but an approach for the season. Like, how am I going to be an impact this season? How can I fill a role? Usually, you have to wait till you get there, and I got to see who do we have, like what's the landscape of our team, to figure out what the best role is going to be for us to win. But I usually try to go into it with kind of a basic idea of, okay, these are the ways I can be effective. And the biggest thing for me has been, as I've slowed down with athleticism and certain things physically, that's actually benefited my game in some ways, because I was always a go, go, go slash, kind of going a million miles per hour, catch, go, boom, rebound, hustle, that, just go, go, go. I was a motor type guy, but sometimes I didn't need to do all that. Like sometimes it's like slow down a little bit. You can control the pace. In watching some of these guys, how in the game the NBA now is played with a lot of guys using their body. If you look at Harden and Luka and a lot of these guards now, how they use their body to manipulate the defense and slow things down. It's not all this straight line. It's go, stop, go, and then the change of speed. So I've used change of speed and using my body. And I've learned how to use my body and manipulate the speed of not only myself, but the defender. And that's made me be able to still be effective offensively. And then little stuff like rebound. I mean, that's one of the things you can control no matter what. Even if you play physical and position yourself well, you can still be effective with that. So that's it. I've had to change the speed at which I play, and I've had to use new ways of manipulating the defense to be able to get to where I'm trying to go. And so I found, especially in France, man, the league is so athletic. It's like, if I was to say, where's the worst place for me to go at 38 as I'm, slowing down, it's number one's France, hands down. I said when I left France 3 years ago, I'm like, I'm never going back. I'm never coming back to this league. Like, at this point in my career, no way, because it's the closest to the NBA that there is in Europe as far as the way that the game's played, the length, the athleticism, stuff like that. So I had the opportunity and I ended up coming back, but yeah, it's extremely athletic. I think there's going to be more and more guys from France in the NBA, because the level of size and athleticism coming out of Africa, and then a lot of the people in France are going from Africa to France, and then ultimately developing in France, and then going out into the basketball world. So it's going to be more and more talents coming out of France for sure.
I agree. Like every time like the World Championships come around to the Olympics, like I'm surprised they don't do better, because they never put together like their full talent of players. They have so many guys. Like you mentioned, like Tony Parker, and those guys, Boris Diaw and Rudy Gobert, and then they got this new kid, right? The 17-year-old. Is he in the league? Like, did you play against him this year? I can't think of his name, but like there's a 17-year-old phenom from France who's supposed to.
Yeah, he moved his way up. He started in one of the lower divisions, but I think next year he's going to be in the first division. He's going to be in the top league. So I'll play against him next year. I've seen him on videos. I saw like that clip when he was playing one-on-one with Rudy Gobert. But yeah, Rudy's a guy. I forgot you mentioned Rudy. Yeah, there's dude, there's literally probably 15, 20 guys from France in the NBA right now who are, you know, pretty impact guys. There's the wing for Philly, the good defenders. The guy Nicoletta or whatever, Frank Niclita, who was a lotto pick who went to the Knicks. So yeah, it's
Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier's in there.
Evan, that's the guy I was thinking of who's in Boston now. That's the name I was looking for. Evan Fournier, yeah. And so he looks, I mean, he looks all the way legit. I mean, from what I've seen, and being able to play against him, it'll be interesting to see. I played against Porzingis in Spain when Porzingis was that age. So it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts to, you know, playing at a higher level. But he looks like he's going to be big time.
I went back today and I was watching some YouTube videos, some highlights of yourself from like 5, 6 years ago when the athleticism was still there. And I'm guessing you're not going to attack this kid the same way you're doing back in 2012. Like, for those that haven't seen highlights of you from like 10 years ago, go check out the athleticism, because I don't know which stop it was, but just dunking everything, blocking everything. It's crazy. People got to check that out. You mentioned how this team wanted to bring you back, right? And it's always nice to be wanted. But I want to go back to a time earlier in your career when you also were very wanted. This is when you were making your college decision. So name, image, and likeness. This is something that just came out where these college kids can now profit off their name, image, and likeness. Were those opportunities there for you? Like, do you look back now like, damn, like I could have made a little bit of money during my college days if this was going on back then?
Yeah, for sure. I think first and foremost, I think it's great, and I think it's about time. Like, what are we talking about? I mean, these universities are making so much money off these players. The NCAA is making so much money off these kids, and a majority of us are scraping pennies to go to Wawa and get a turkey sandwich. Like, meanwhile, you know what I mean? Meanwhile, the university's making millions and millions of dollars off our jerseys. So it's about time. And I'm really excited to see all the things that are going on and more options for players, you know, outside of just the NCAA, because everybody doesn't necessarily have to have the same path. So there's a lot of cool opportunities now to play in other places, Europe, G League. Now they're starting this other league that I heard about for guys in and out of high school, I guess. But yeah, I think that if you know, now was then, and we were able to profit off this, and I was in that market of the, you know, the DMV, the Baltimore, DC area, I think that I would have been able to make a solid amount of money from that. I mean, there was opportunities for us to make money then. It wasn't necessarily legal. You know what I mean? Like, there's options and opportunities for college athletes to make money when you're in college. It's just certain universities do things above board, certain don't. You know, Maryland was a university that did things the right way. Gary Williams wasn't having that. But there was opportunities. There was always people around trying to, and Gary would find ways to get those snakes out of the grass. Because yeah, man, there was tons of opportunities to make money. So I would have loved that. And I think it would have been, and I think it's great for young athletes at this point.
Is there anything you would have said no to potential endorsements? Would you have stayed away from like something, or would you have just said yes to anything and collected all the money you could have?
At this stage, like, if we were to look at it from right now with what's going on with the cannabis industry, I wouldn't connect myself in college to that at this point. Like, I wouldn't rep a weed company. You know what I mean? I don't think that would have been a good look. I probably wouldn't have done anything with any alcohol related companies. But outside of that, I mean, I can't really think of too many things that I wouldn't have done. I mean, at that time, you know, you're literally like, you're on a per diem where you're like, okay, am I going to go to the Boston market today? Am I going to go to Wawa? Am I going to Mickey D's? You're trying to like put yourself on a budget. And, you know, so if you'd have told me, I would have, I don't know, name something you think I might not have done. And, you know, because I don't know how many, other than those things, I probably would have done anything, endorsement wise, you know what I mean, at that age.
Absolutely. You brought up per diem, and I wanted to ask you this question because I don't get to have too many high-profile former Division I athletes on. So when I was in college, University of Maine at Fort Kent, we used to get per diem on road trips. We get $10 a day. And me and my buddy would put that money together. We'd hit the gas station and buy food for super, super cheap. try to collect some money throughout
Yeah.
the trip and then buy something on the way back. What kind of per diem were you guys getting at the University of Maryland?
I think that our per diem was monthly, or I want to say it was monthly, and I think we were getting somewhere around $1,000 a month.
Okay.
It was something like that. I know our checks were like 1,200 when we get them, and some of my teammates are straight to the mall, just gone within the first 2 days. You know what I mean? I remember when we got one of our first ones the freshman year, me and the other recruits that came in, one was an All-American, and we were the recruiting class right after they won the national championship, and we all got our first $1,000 check, and we all got like a watch that had like the diamonds on the bezel, and it was
yeah.
just the spec diamonds. It was like a basketball design on it. We all blew the check within the first 24 hours on those, and then we're like, now what are we gonna do? Yeah. But yeah, I think it was like 1,200, but I don't remember exactly how long the time period was for. I want to say it was for a month, something like that.
It's not bad. It's better.
And then on the road, I think we get $100, I think, for each road game, or maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was 200, something like that, for the road games.
It's better than my $10 a day. All right, try living around $10 a day on the road back in the day.
Well, usually we'd have $10 a day after we blew all the money in the first 24 hours. So it was, I've been there from that perspective.
You mentioned the road in the ACC. I've always wondered, because JJ Redick got the treatment when he was on the road, because he was the white guy and stuff like that. Were you ever the white guy getting it from the crowd on the road? Like, did they single you out because you were the white guy and you're one of the best players in the ACC? Yeah,
I got it quite a bit, and I brought a lot of it upon myself. I mean, I loved the interaction with the fans, so I would look for it. I would try to engage with the fans and stuff like that on the road. So as soon as you do something to them or give them any attention at all, then even if they weren't focused on you, they're going to go in on you at that point. And to me, it usually just made me kind of more dialed in on the road when I would do that. But yeah, man, I got it all. Token white boy was the famous chant that they do to most of us, like they'd put up signs like, the rest of the team's GPA and then the token white boy's GPA, and like basically insinuating that we're just there to bring the GPA up, which in some cases, like, there are guys, but it just wasn't only white guys. Like, we had a couple of really smart black guys on my team who were there in like engineering school or whatever, and they would and that was one of the reasons that they were recruited. That is real. They do recruit a few guys to help keep the GPA up. But if they thought I was one of them, I wasn't. I didn't end up being that guy for Maryland, unfortunately. Gary gave me a little bit of crap about that because I did well in school, but I spent and committed so much of my time to the game that I wasn't like outstanding by any stretch of the imagination, So, but I got a lot of that, man. They went at me hard on the road for sure, especially in Duke. But our fans went at JJ super hard too. So.
I was going to say, the Maryland fans are not known to be the nicest fans either, right? The Maryland fans.
Yeah, no, man. They were pretty serious with JJ. They got his cell phone number one time, and like they went at him hard. Yeah, Maryland fans are definitely not. They're known as some of like the most vicious fans in terms of some of the stuff they're going to say. Like the Duke fans are like saying corny stuff to you. You know what I mean? They're like really smart stuff that it's like even going over your head. You're like, that joke was way too smart for me to even get. But in Maryland, it was like grimy, like coming at your mom or your girl or whatever. So it was, Maryland fans were pretty harsh.
It's good guys to have in your corner right there. Good things to have in your corner. So the fans were hostile. Some of these coaches in Maine seem to have a reputation for having a bad mouth as well and saying some bad things. Any coaches ever say anything to you? Like, did anyone ever say something where you felt the need to clap back and like say something back to them?
The worst I ever got it was from my own coach, Gary. Man, he was. I never got anything from any other coaches, but Gary he had no filter, and so. There was one time my grandmother was behind the bench. It was a home game. and our family section seats were right behind the bench, and I think it was maybe my sophomore year, and something happened in the flex offense where I went out of the offense for a shot or something, and Gary takes me out and starts going at me and saying, everything under the sun. And my poor, like, 80-year-old grandmother's sitting right behind, mortified, and after the game, we're in the hallway, Gary's walking by, and my grandmother stops Gary and it's like, I heard those things you said to my grandson, and I don't appreciate it. And Gary's face was all red. Because Gary's a really, really good, nice guy. Like, he's just so competitive that in the moment on the court, he's this fiery, vocal guy. And then behind closed doors, he's super chill, laid back on the golf course. Like, so he was apologetic, and it was pretty funny. But I got it. We all got it from Gary. Pretty intense. So he was definitely the number one guy for that stuff.
We talked about this a little bit last time when we had you on about how you had some rap skills, and then I think shortly after, right? Didn't you get co-signed by was it Dame? Came out on JJ's podcast and co-signed you as a good rapper for Hoopers.
Well, so that was interesting how that played out. So one of my friends who I played with in high school, he's a little younger than me, Martin Cleveland. He played with Carlos Strong when Deeren finally won a state championship, which we couldn't get done somehow.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, did you hear Dame bring you up on JJ's podcast? And I'm like, I don't listen to JJ's podcast. I mean, I've started to from time to time now because he's got the videos on YouTube. And he gets some good guests. I think JJ does a really good job with that, with his podcast. And I was like, I didn't hear it. So I went and listened to it. And so Dame was referring to basketball. He was saying, did you play with Nik Caner Medley when, was he at Maryland when you were at Duke? And Dame was like, he's nice, bro. He's nice, which I thought was phenomenal. I loved it. And then JJ was like, wait, he can rap? And Dame's like, that's not what I'm talking. No, like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. But then because JJ was laughing about it, and JJ knows damn well I can rap because JJ and I were roommates at Jordan's camp out in Cali when we'd go out there and we were counselors at his camp.
Yeah.
And JJ was like the type of rapper who was like talking about the flipperica expialidocious, like all this type of stuff.
That Duke shit, right?
That Duke shit. A perfect way to articulate it. He's a Duke rapper.
Yeah.
And so we go back and forth. And so he'd heard me rap many, many times, man. And so the way he carried that whole thing, I thought was corny as shit. And then he cuts it out of the podcast.
Yeah, I went back today to try to find it. I couldn't find it.
Right, because when he actually published the actual podcast of like the one that went on YouTube, he cut that part out of it.
Yeah.
Which I was like, come on, bro. I'm getting this, your boy gets a shout out from Dame. I mean, I thought it was a dope little clip. Obviously, I'm biased, and he cuts it out. And so then a couple of my boys were like, you should do something where you're atting them and start and come at them with like, some like little, because remember when Dame was doing like the 8-bar Thursdays or whatever, they were like, you should do something like that. And then I'm like, you know what, I'm not even gonna lower myself to JJ's Duke raps and go there. But I thought it was pretty cool, man, to have Dame mention me at all, because I guess he must have been 12 or 13, or maybe a little older than that, maybe 14, 15, maybe. So if I'm 19, 20, how old's Dame now? 31?
He's probably 31?
7, 6. So he was probably 12. Yeah, he was, a young guy coming up and watching college basketball. So I thought it was pretty cool.
I'm mad that there's like no good clips on YouTube, man. Like there's not much from the Maryland Duke days, and it's tough to find some good clips on YouTube. But there are some out there for you guys want to go back and check that out, because that was a glorious time the ACC had Mims on Ralph Mims on last year, and he was talking about all the dudes that were in the ACC during that time frame. And they're just stacked team after stacked team after stacked
Yeah.
team, and just you name it, and they were all there at the same time.
Yeah, it was. It was a great conference. And again, to what we were chatting about a little bit earlier with the platform and where the social media and content is, you know, the way that it is now for high school guys. Like I saw some videos on one of these, you know, big platforms of the young fella's name's Cooper Flag, right? The
Yeah.
kid who's coming into Macomb.
Yeah.
Like a mixtape of him, you know, and so you have so much more exposure.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have so much more. You can, with the way the internet now is, there's nothing that's like, there's nowhere that isn't going to be seen. There's nowhere that's not going to be able to get eyes on it, because it's just completely different now. And even with college clips, like you don't see really any highlight videos or mixtapes of people's careers. Like the only highlight tape I ever had was like my dad VHS a lot of the videos and then cut something up way back, like just for fun. It wasn't like a well done type of highlight thing, but I wish there was. I wish there was. I wish there was more of that stuff, just to go down memory lane. But it's great for players now to have the accessibility to their games that there is now with all this stuff.
So you were lucky. You got to go play for the defending national champs. You picked Maryland as your school to go to. A couple of months back, I did something on the page with had they gone to college in Maine, where would they have gone?
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Just humor us. Like if you would have stuck around and went to school in Maine, where would you have gone to school?
I would have gone to University of Maine. You know, being as I think it's the only D1 school in Maine, right?
Did you seriously consider Maine, or was it not like I'm gonna go to the highest level that I can?
No, I wasn't considering Maine. I was going to go to the highest level I could. And when I started to get recruited, there was the very early stages. There was like some Big East schools, and then I knew that Maine wasn't going to be in the mix. And at that time, Giannetti was the coach, and he was a great guy. And like he was like, Nick, you know, I'm out of the fact that you're a Mainer, I just want to let you know that I'd love to have you, but also as you know, we kind of built a relationship. He's like, you know, I want you to kind of, you know, go out there and try to play at the highest level you can, you know. So he was great. And it probably would have been Maine, you know, it probably would have been UMO. I mean, I love Coach Richards at SMCC. That's why I loved when I saw the jerseys. Like I hit him up and I was like, what do you think, Coach? Would, you know, just met. And he was loving it. He was like, man, you know, I would have loved that. And I thought that was a cool concept. I had fun with that. Keegan Highland sent me the clips, pictures of it when you posted it. And I hit up Henricing too at USM. My dad was a professor at USM. So if it was like the number where I would want to go, if I could, you know, like a bunch of my good friends like Jason Levesque played at USM, that would have been cool to play at USM because my dad was a professor there. So that would have been a lot of fun.
I got to ask you this question here because I seriously want to know what you feel about this. So there's always lists that come out like best player, best team, this, that. And you're what, 19 years removed from when you graduated high school. Your name still comes up as the best, you know, best player this, best team during this, best team that could have won during. And now we're starting to see guys get some recognition here, get some offers. We got Dom Campbell, who's getting a lot of serious D1 looks right now. He's going to go someplace. He's going to go to a Power 5 conference. And once again, your name comes up like the most heavily recruited player since Nik Caner Medley. Are you surprised, like 20 years later, that there hasn't been more that's happened in terms of kids going to big schools out of Maine? Like since you like, when you were coming up, like Jamal obviously got looks. There's a dude from South Portland. I can't think of his name right now.
Mark Wood, yeah.
Went to Notre Dame right for a year. Ralph Mims went to Florida State. So, like, you know, there was guys who were going to big-time schools when you were coming up. Like, did you think that was just going to continue? And are you a little bit surprised that 20 years later, like, everyone still compares to you?
Yeah, I am. I am surprised to a certain extent. And then in some ways not surprised because assuming that there wasn't as many changes with accessibility, I was recruited mostly because I left Maine and went to, my dad's from Los Angeles. And so I went to some camps there early in high school. That was where it really got me on the radar for being recruited. Um, so not a lot of coaches are coming to Maine. Maine hasn't put itself on the map as being a respected, culture for producing high level basketball players. So it's not like coaches are putting it on their calendar like, I got to get up to Maine. There's no big time tournaments really in Maine where it's like, I got to get up to this tournament to see, So unless guys are going out of the state and putting themselves in the sort of the summer process, it's harder to get recruited out of Maine. So from that perspective, it's not crazy surprising. But I think one of the things that's happening right now is it's a generational change where the people right now that are developing young players are our generation, your generation, like guys that went through that same generation when it was myself and Walter and Mark Wood and Pillsbury and Keegan Highland and Troy Barneys and stuff like that are now in the player development coaching side of things, like yourself, doing this platform and articulating the game at a level where it excites young players. None of this stuff really happened for us, and at least from when we stopped playing until now, it was a turnover of, okay, now that generation has to go to college, that generation has to come into their own as adults and position themselves with their families, or whether it's I'm going to be a player development, AAU, wherever, the coaching. And I think that started to happen. Like when I heard about Cooper Flagg as an example, the first thing I said is, where does he play? Who's coaching him? And then when I found out that he was on Bedard's team, I'm like, doesn't surprise me at all. He plays with Bedard's son. Bedard, if Bedard isn't the best basketball mind in the state right now, he's one of them for sure. So for him to have that type of leadership and be with Bedard, not only from a basketball standpoint, because half of this is mental, half of it is going into these tournaments as the only white guy being like, I'm going in there and I'm going to kill, I'm going to dominate. And having that confidence to do so, you need to have people in your corner that empower you mentally to do that. Not the people who are like, oh man, you're going to play against the dudes from New York, man. Like, sure, you're going to get dunked on, dude. Or no, then there's the way that I was raised. Like, no, you're going to go in there and you're going to dunk on people and you're going to surprise them and show them what time it is. And that was the narrative that I had as my tailwind. And that was the reason why I was able to go into these environments with confidence. And now we have guys who are leading young people in Maine who are helping put that confidence. That's one of the reasons I want to do some of the things I'm doing with not only just these clinics on the court, but sitting down with young players and talking to them and saying, look, you can do X, Y, and Z. This is what your mentality has to be. These are the things that it takes to be successful from Maine. This is what I did, at least. There's other ways to do it. Or this is what Longstaff did, or Barneys did, or, some of these other guys who have, Nick Mayo, who I hope Nick comes back. I know Nick is more of a quiet type of guy, but Nick's a hell of a player, man. And Nick's a lot better than people know. I mean, Nick, to me, and this is absolutely no disrespect to, anybody. To me, I haven't seen a better player in my time as a peer from Maine than Nick. I think Nick has the most well-rounded game, the most upside. And to me, I feel the same way about me. We had a really good conversation about this the last time I was on. I think it's complete BS that I didn't get a look, and I know there's a lot of reasons why that happened. And it's timing, and it's the way the league was played. It was the positioning that I had at that time, and everything's timing and injury, blah, blah, blah. To me, it's BS that Nick didn't get that look too, because to me, when you look at the way that this dude shot the ball in Summer League, he shot over 40% from the NBA free. When you look what he did with the minutes that he had and his size, he's 6'9", 6'10", athletic, can shoot the ball at a high clip. How is he not on an NBA roster? And it just goes to show you like, I was thinking about it today when I was just thinking about some of the stuff that we may talk about, like the NFL. If you took NFL has X amount of players professionally. Baseball has X amount of So me, Nick Mayo, we're NBA players if the roster was a little bit bigger. I mean, the NBA is unique in the standpoint there's only really 12, 13 guys.
Right.
You know? So you're talking about 400 players in the entire world are in that league. But in all these other leagues, basically every other league, there's a few hundred more than that. So we're both in that 100 more, 50 more. I mean, if there was 5, 10 more picks or 2, 3 more roster spots, me and him are both in the league right now. So it just goes to show like how thin the margins are and how things really have to line up. Because to me, Nick's an NBA player. And not only that, but when in Europe, he's in Japan. And I wish the guy would play in Europe, man, because Japan the money's great. So he's making more money in Japan than he would in Europe. But it's a different experience, you know, like I think if he plays in Europe, and I hope he does at some point, I think that he would be a really high level guy in Europe. I think he would have similar opportunities to do a lot of the things that I did in my career in Europe. So I hope that, you know, because I really like his game. I think he's extremely talented. And I do want to see some of these TBT games. I want to watch him play. Because Eberlein Drive, the team that took him, is to me on paper one of the strongest teams in that tournament. Yeah. And for them to go out and recruit, they can get anybody they want. And this dude's in Japan, and he was still on their radar. Like, we need this guy, and that says a lot about him and his game. And I haven't seen any of the games yet. I'm going to watch. I'm going to start watching. I'm going to try to catch the game tomorrow night. I think he's on ESPN2 tomorrow night at 7:00. I'm going to try to catch that game because I like watching him play. The dude's got game.
Yeah, you talk about going into places and just, you know, not being the one getting dunked on and being excited to be there, but going in there and dunking on people. And if you guys haven't seen highlights from his game, I think they played yesterday. He had a couple dunks, and he's one of the top scorers in the tournament so far. Like, I think he put up 22 like in the game. So I mean, he's showing up at the TBT. So that goes to show you what kind of player he is. And he's supposed to be making an appearance on Big Time Hoops, hopefully this week as well. So hoping to get Nick and Nick on the podcast this week. You talked about what you got going on here this summer, and you have an annual event you throw. And you touched a little bit about how you want to add on to that this year and kind of grow that, kind of get more into mentorship and help push some of these kids that are coming up in Maine here a little bit further along, kind of guide them. If you could shed some light on what people can expect, exactly what you got going on, how it's different this year, and what it's all about.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We have a nonprofit that myself and Colby Evans is the co-director and co-founder. Played at Portland. His brother Tyler was Mr. Maine basketball out of Portland. Won a state championship. We founded this 11 years ago, and we started it with just two things. One, we wanted to unify different backgrounds in Portland, Kennedy Park, and some of these other areas, and then everywhere else around some of these lower economic, background sort of neighborhoods in Portland, and go right into them and connect the kids and create relationships. Because I think I'm a big believer that the way people are socialized is the way that racism is brought into their life. So I think if you create relationships with different races at as young age as possible, those relationships and that way of being socialized with creating, having more diverse relationships. Like if you grow up and all your friends are white and you're around people that are, old school racist white dudes, then, it's probably going to be in your DNA to a certain extent. But if you grow up at a young age and you're around all different race or backgrounds, the chances that you're going to have that ignorance is a lot less. So we wanted to be able to create. That's why TRUE, Together Reaching Unity, the acronym. That's the reason why we started creating these free programs for basketball clinics to bring these kids together. And then the free part was big for us. Like when we were young, a lot of these camps, great camps around Maine, they're a little bit too expensive for some kids, and we wanted to eliminate that barrier and allow kids to be able to do stuff for free, but also not have it be that free thing where it's like, oh, it's free, so it's not really going to be that. There's not going to be that much content. It's free, but we want it to be free, but with the same level of teaching and the same type of content as something you have to pay $500 for, or whatever the case may be. So we've done that for 10 years, and now we're adding a leadership program where we're looking for nominations from the top coaches and basketball minds in the state. And that's one of the reasons I reached out to you, to try to find some young kids, boys and girls in high school or going into high school, who are motivated to be better. Like, I don't want kids in the program, to be fair, who don't want to be there, whose coach said you have to be there. I'd rather have a kid who's the 10th kid on the bench on his high school team, but wants to be there because he wants to get better. Because to me, those are the boys and girls that ultimately have the chance to be pros. Like, to be a pro, you have to do a lot more to be good at basketball, And so a lot of that is character stuff, work ethic stuff, decision-making stuff that matters. And so we're doing a program this summer where there's one day of sitting down in the boardroom of a business I own in Portland called Cloudport and talking about those things. Another day we go into the community and do like a community service thing where we go into Kennedy Park during this event they have, like this community barbecue, and then give money to the city of Portland and have these players see, that type of stuff happening to motivate them to give back to their communities. And then also doing something off the court with training strategy at Foley's Fitness. So we're doing a few more days. We usually just do a free camp, like one day thing. And this year we're doing a couple more days, and we're looking for nominations for the top boys and girls in the state. This year we're only going to do roughly 15 players total. But hopefully as time goes on, because we want to be really hands-on. As the group gets bigger, it gets a little bit more difficult to have a lot of interaction with each kid and spend a lot of time. So that's what we're trying to do this year, and just better equip kids to just have a few extra tools in their toolbox to help them as they prepare for the next steps in their career.
And you got a couple of other well-suited individuals that are going to be part of this as well, right? Some of the people that bring them up in terms of their.
Yeah, we got Josh Longstaff. Exactly. We got Josh Longstaff, NBA assistant coach. We got Troy Barnes, who's, played about 10 years at a high level in Europe. And Troy's done a lot giving back to his community, Lewiston, Auburn, in the game of basketball right now. So he'll be there. And a couple other guys who, Jamal Katarina, who to me was kind of like, I think we might have talked about it before. He was a guy who was sort of a leader for me and challenged me. He was better than me a majority of my childhood. So he pushed me and helped me get better. And he's a brilliant mind, man. Like, Jamal is like a very, very, very smart, deep thinker. And so I want kids to be able to hear his perspective of his career path as well. So we're going to just try to bring different experience and perspectives to young players. I certainly didn't have that when I was these kids' age. So we're going to try to do that again with the kids that, really want to try to find ways to get better.
There's been some nominations sent out. If people that are listening have some nominations, how can they go about that?
Yeah, well, reach out to my on Facebook is pretty much the social media that I use. I respond to every message I get on Facebook, and as well, and Tom, to you too. I mean, if anybody has a personal or relationship, let me know, because again, we're trying to. The numbers are going to be limited this year, but we want to try to get the top young players, and it doesn't have to be the best players, but just players that, high character kids that want to get better. And so that's what we're trying to do. Up to myself, reach out to, Tom, if you have that link, and no question about it. If you want to be involved, then we'll get with you and try to make it happen.
No doubt. I'm gonna get you out of here. One more question. So you mentioned earlier about how Maine's in a place now where we got people that know it and can teach these people and show these kids. And and give them the help and kind of push them along. Once you're all done, once you finally hang it up, because you say you got one more year, but who knows if it's going to be another year after that if you guys win another championship. You're going to come back to Maine at some point and be one of those minds, one of those guys who's just on the scene, helping push the game along?
I'm going to try to continue to have an impact in any way. One of the things that I'm really mindful of is all the AAU coaches and trainers and high school coaches who have put a lot of time into developing their programs. So I just want to be an asset. I'm not going to come into Maine and start my own AAU team or start my own training facility or come in and start, training kids, which, takes clients away from some of these other guys who are doing a great job. There's some great trainers in Maine right now. So I'll be an asset in any way that I can. And I'll always be coming to Maine. My family, we have a place in Florida. My wife's from here. We're going to raise our daughter down here in Miami, but I also have a place in Maine, and I'll be going back and forth. So I'll be up there often. And yeah, I want to be able to share my experiences. That to me is a responsibility that I have to pay it forward to the young generation of players, this generation, the next generation, to share my experience in any way that I can. Any young player who wants to gain knowledge of what the process looks like or wants to get better and talk about some of the things they can do to get better, I want to be able to be an asset for those kids at any point of the process. So yeah, I'll be there, and I'm an open book, and I'm really accessible. Like I said, anybody who reaches out to me, I'm gonna hit you back. So I'll try to help and share my experiences any way I can, however often I can, for sure.
All right. So the question was, you see it like with this big 3-on-3 league where it's a lot of guys that are retired that kind of play the 3-on-3 thing competitively. Any chance once you're done playing professionally that you're just going to come to Maine and like play in some random 3-on-3 tournament or some men's league tournament and just bust ass like as an older guy?
There's definitely a chance. I saw they got a tournament going on called the Noonan Tournament. I'm planning on trying to get to the championship game of that. A couple of my buddies are playing in that tournament. I'll be in Maine on the 29th, and I think the championship game is that Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to try to be in the building for that. And Keegan and a bunch of guys, still play a lot. And they're obviously not still playing competitively. So who knows, man? I mean, I love the game, and I want to come up. I definitely have some shit to talk, up in Maine when I'm done playing and go up there and get in the mid post and mess around. So I can definitely see myself doing something like that for sure. I would love to.
We're gonna be on the lookout for that. Anything that you want to hit on before we get up out of here? Did we miss anything?
That's it, man.
You want to go at JJ Redick real quick?
I'm not going to go on JJ Redick right this second because my daughter's right outside the door and it'd probably be too explicit. So I'm going to leave that part out. But I just appreciate coming on, man. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I look forward to coming back on here anytime. Absolutely.
But there's one thing that I left out because it's a sore subject. But 20th anniversary of Joe Campbell's buzzer beater this past year.
Was it?
Yeah. 20 years this year.
Oh, man. And it doesn't hurt any less 20 years later. 20 years from now, it's going to hurt just as bad, man. Yeah. That was a hell of a game, man. That was a tough one.
I just thought I'd throw that in there at the end here. Just kind of.
No worries. I mean, you're a Bangor guy. I expect it.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Big Time Hoops Podcast. Shout out to Nik Caner Medley for coming through. Always welcome here on the podcast. And yeah, like you said, he's an open book. If anyone got any questions or these young guys coming up, if you guys want some advice, reach out to the man. He's been doing it at the highest level for going into year 16 here and still doing it. So
appreciate it, man.
Definitely use them. It's going to do it. Make sure to check out all of our previous episodes, wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time with another Big Time episode of Big Time Hoops Podcast.